Snowed Up by Edwin Waugh, narrated by Malc Cowle. Chapter 2. In winter's tedious nights sit by the fire with good old folks and let them tell thee tales. Shakespeare. Come, this'll do, I think, said the landlord to his friend as they stood in the door of the kitchen, looking slowly round at the cosy picture before them. And it really was a pleasant scene to meet with on a wintry night. Joe Faulkner and his quondam friend felt the beauty of the contrast all the more after the glimpse they had just had of the storm outside, and there was not a soul in the kitchen of the White House that night in whose mind the rare comfort of that genial nest was not heightened by an almost unconscious sense of the dark wilderness around it, across which the snow-laden blast was sweeping through the night gloom with restless rage. It was indeed a pleasant sight, glittering with scrupulous cleanliness and glowing with a geniality to which the characteristic appearances of those present lent no small additional charm. The cat was stretched half asleep upon the bright hearthstone, basking in the firelight, and dreaming of holes in the stable by the side of which it had watched hour after hour, listening to the provoking cheep of uncaught mice, and vexed at every passing sound which startled its prey from a sense of security favourable to its own designs. The great kettle was singing upon the hook over the fire, as if it was anxious to do something for the good of the company. The landlady's rocking chair creaked now and then with a kind of drowsy chirrup as she slowly swayed her buxom form to and fro, knitting and smiling the while as her benevolent eyes fell upon her husband and his crony in the doorway. The burly quarryman in front of the fire had turned half round upon his chair with his legs crossed and his pot in his hand, his massive countenance beaming with glee as he gazed silently at the newcomers into the kitchen. The old pedlar's faded eyes were lit up with a gleam of unusual brilliance. His bald head, like Alps in the sunset, was touched for the moment with the gay tinge of youth's roses again, and the parallels which time had delved in his brow were all running with unexpected joy as he rubbed his shrunken hands together and pushed his seat noiselessly back a little to make room, and the girl, who was waiting on, stood motionless by the side of the kitchen dresser with a dishcloth in one hand and a half-white pot in the other, her ripe lips trembling upon the balance of laughter and her glittering eyes fixed upon the doorway as if she thought that there was something funnier than usual coming from that quarter at last. The landlord was still standing with his hand upon the door-cheek, and the sexton stood beside him in all his travelling gear, his hat upon his head, his stick in hand, a thick muffler round his neck, and his greatcoat buttoned up. "Can we manage here, thinkster?" said the landlord, addressing his friend. "Let's try," said the sexton. "Nice nest, isn't it?" continued the landlord. "Snug as a button?" said the sexton, rubbing his hands. "It smells weel too," said the landlord. "Sweet as a posy," replied the sexton. "It's pratty," continued the landlord. "I like the look on it," replied the sexton. "Well, come a bit further in then," said the landlady. "Come a bit further in, and let's see how we like a new." "Aye, come in do," said the quarryman. "There's no silver expected at door." "Dare the venture, thinkster?" said Joe, taking his hand off the door-cheek and turning to the sexton. "I'll chance it," replied the sexton. "Take those things off then," said the landlord, advancing into the kitchen with a port and a presence that made the place look jollier than ever. "Take those mufflements off," continued he, "and bring thyself to an anchor till morning, for thou stirs no one out of this house to-night, as thou the cat jumps. Here, Ailsie," said he, addressing the girl as he helped the sexton to doff his winter habit. Here, Elsie, take these things and put 'em where they be dry for morning." "I'll see to 'em," said the landlady, laying her knitting aside. "I'll tell thou what, old lad," said Joe as he tugged at the sexton's overcoat. "There's a terrible lot of hap about thee." "Oh, go on," cried the sexton, "go on. They'll find a bit of good stuff in middle." "Then thou thinks the Colonel's quite as good at shell duster?" "It's sound, Joe," replied the sexton. "It's sound, as how 'tis." "I dare say it is, old lad," continued the landlord, "but I doubt there's better chaps than either they or me that's known as well lapped up as thou art this night." "Thousands, Joe, thousands," replied the sexton. But if I'd my mind, he was beginning when the landlord broke in again. "Oh, I know," said he. "If tha'd thy mind, tha'd dress 'em all in Rochdale flannel and velvet, and feed 'em all simblings and port wine and a sop of chicken broth at bedtime." "Well," replied the sexton, "I'd let 'em have a bit of summat as long as stuff lasted." "I dare say they would," answered the landlord, "but I doubt some of 'em would pop their clothes, old lad." "Well, they happen would," said the sexton, "but that won't be my fault, then knows." "No more it would, old lad," replied the landlord. "I'll tell thou what, Joe," continued the sexton, "I look upon ill-disposed folk as a mack of mad. That is, they're afflicted with a kind of madness." "Then we want 'em more 'sylums building," replied the landlord, giving a last tug at the sexton's coat. "There's no 'sylums for some folk, nor better grave," said the sexton, drawing his arm out of the sleeve. "Come, let's have none of that mournful trade of thine to-night," replied the landlord. "Thou talks like a chap that's getting orders for buryings. Theer, old lad," continued he, when he'd drawn his coat off, "thou looks rayther less like a woolsack than thou did a bit sin. Come and sit thou down, and do not set us agate a crying with thy talk, whatever thou does." "I'm no one of a crying sort," said the sexton. "There's sin to many funerals for that," replied the landlord, "but they can happen feel a bit if they canna cry." "I shouldn't wonder," said the sexton. "Well, let's sit us down then," replied the landlord. "Can you make room for us?" "We can try, if your shoes are clean," replied the landlady. The quarryman had already shifted his chair away from the front of the fire, and the old pedlar had drawn his chair quietly a little back, as if he was afraid that his shrunken figure occupied too much of the apartment. "Plant thyself down there," said the landlord, setting a chair for the sexton. "Plant thyself there, and there'll be less biddy legs, and let's try and be comfortable a bit." "Come here, Joe," said the landlady to her husband as she pulled a massive armchair to the fireside. "Come here, thou'll look the best in thy own corner." And when they got settled into their places, the landlord said to his friend, "Well, come now, what are we to have? We's be like to do a bit of summat for th' house, or else it'll not pay for coals. Give it a name." "Brandy for me," said the sexton. "Safe drink, taken seldom. Our old meister used to say, when in doubt, play brandy." "But I'm no one in doubt," replied the landlord, "so I think I'll play whisky again. Come, Elsie, bring 'em in." "And bring me another, same as afore," said the quarryman, handing his pot to the girl. "Come, old lad," continued he, turning to the pedlar, "you're sitting dry-mouthed." "Oh, nay," replied the old man, tilting his pot to one side and looking into it. "Have a drop left yet?" "Swipe it off then," said the quarryman, "and try another top." When the landlady brought the old man his drink, she asked him in a whisper if he would like a mouthful of something to eat, and he thanked her and told her in an undertone that he thought he could manage a bit of bread and cheese. "You shall have it," said she. "Come up to table here." "Mistress," replied the old man, catching at her gown as she turned away, and pointing to the sideboard under the window, "I'd rather have it in this nook if you'n a mind." You shall then, whispered she, patting him on the shoulder. In 2 or 3 minutes the handsome remnant of a noble sirloin, with the usual trimmings, was spread before the old pedlar's astonished eyes in the shady nook near the window, and the kind landlady slyly whispered to him to fall to and play a good stick. God bless me, said the old pedlar, with a moistening eye, as he gazed upon the things before him. It's a long while since I sat down in front of a lump like this. Well, finish it if you're gone, whispered the landlady. Finish it, replied he, looking up into her face. It had last me 3 weeks. The quarryman, the landlord, and the sexton had all been quietly watching this little touch of kindly byplay, but, with benevolent delicacy of feeling, they chatted on with one another as if quite unconscious of what was going on in the corner, and they drew their chairs together, throwing the pedlar's corner still more into the shade, so as to encourage the old man to get his meal freely and in his own way, unrestrained by the gaze of strangers. Come, said the landlord, raising his glass, thank God that we've a roof over us. Amen, said the sexton. Amen again, whispered the old pedlar in the corner, with his mouth half full. The same here, said the quarryman. You may all make up your minds to stop where you are tonight, said the landlord, looking round the kitchen. I think we han done that, replied the quarryman. I'd aimed at getting to the bottom of brew, but I signed oars soon after this storm come on. It's as well as it is, said the landlord. The storm was raging with unabated fury, and in the pause which followed the landlord's words, the dismal howl of the blast came with startling distinctness upon the ears of those in the kitchen. Hush, said the landlord, raising his hand. Hushed. I thought I heard a cry outside. Hushed. It'll be a terrible thing if anybody gets lost in snow. Elsie, get me hat and light that lantern. It's no use, I mun see what it is. The quarryman and the sexton had already jumped from their chairs. I'll go too, cried the quarryman. And so will I, said the sexton. Here, my lass, where's my hat? The old pedlar had laid down his knife and fork, and he had risen from his chair to follow the rest. But the landlord cried, Sit still, old lad, sit still, we can manage. Mary, continued he, addressing the landlady, don't let him come out, he's no unfit. I'll take care he doesn't, said the landlady. Then, rising from her chair, she came across to the old pedlar, and laying her hand upon his shoulder, she said, Stop where you are, it's not fit for you to go out. Sit still, and get some supper into you. I'm sure you can do with it. I can't eat another bit, replied the old man. I can't eat another bit, it's quite upset me. Good Lord, said the landlady, clasping her hands. What a thing it'll be if any poor cretter's lost. Elsie, fill this kettle, and put some more coals on. Dear, oh, what a thing, what a thing. The landlord, with the lantern in his hand, followed by the quarryman and the sexton, had sallied forth into the storm. On their way they summoned Giles too from the stables, and the four were now wading through the snow upon that lonely road in all directions. As they struggled against the heavy-laden blast, which blinded their eyes, they felt how hopeless would be the case of any wanderer upon the moor-top that night. Steadying each other as well as they could in the bewildering fury of the tempest, they waded on, about 1/2 mile up the road, and about the same distance down the hill. Now and then they stopped and shouted aloud in concert, and then they listened, but no human voice responded to their cries. The hollow moan of the snow-laden gale was the only sound to be heard on all that wintry waste, and, after nearly an hour's search, they returned to the house again. They were all thickly over-snowed when they entered the house. As they closed the door, the sexton said, I won't walk 3 miles across the moor top by myself for £10,000. Lad," said the landlord, "thou couldn't do it at no price." "Well, thank God we're no need to try," said the quarryman. Dear, replied the sexton, shaking his head at the thought of the thing. The snow from their clothing had filled the floor of the lobby with a muddy swim. "Come, let's go in," said the landlord. "I think it's naught but the wind," said Joe to his wife as he entered the kitchen, followed by the other two. "It's a blessing," said the landlady, clasping her hands. "Thank God for it," said the old pedlar. "Aye," continued the landlord, "God help any poor soul that's out upon Blackstone Edge this night. There'll be little chance for their life. It's rough, it's rough. Elsie, go and put 2 candles in th' window yon. If aught should happen, and one hadn't done everything they could, it wouldn't be nice to think about after." Dear, no, it wouldn't," said the landlady. "Come, I'll see to candles." "I don't know that I ever seed aught like this," said the quarryman. "Why, it'll be 2 or 3 feet deep afore morning." "It'll be more, where t' drift lies," said the landlord. "How will our Bill Carrier come on? He goes by about 3 in the morning, don't he?" "He'll miss this time, Sam," said the landlord. "I don't know," replied Sam. "He's one of th' hardest chaps alive." "If he were as hard as Brazil, he couldn't do it," continued the landlord. "And if he could, th' horses couldn't get through snow." "He's driven this road a long time," said the quarryman. 20 year, I dare say," replied the landlord. "Quite," said the quarryman, "quite. I were but a lad when he began. That were afore you come to this house, Joe." "Oh, aye," replied the landlord, 10 years before." "I heerd a queer tale about him supping a bottle of vitriol once," said the quarryman. "It were in th' old landlord's time. Bill used to drive by it middle at night then, same as he does now. In those days there were a bit of a window that opened into a kind of a closet at corner at wash-house, and in winter time they used to set Billy's drink in this window, so as he could put his arm in and get it out without disturbing folk in th' house. Well, it seems that one day in depth of winter they getting a bottle of vitriol for summat or another, and some lasses had carelessly set this bottle of vitriol down in window, aside of Bill's drink. Bill always drank rum. Well, all th' house went to bed, and the vitriol bottle were left there close by Bill's rum bottle, and when Bill pooed up at 3 o'clock in next morning, he put his arm into th' window in dark, and he took wrong bottle, and away he went, with vitriol as content as a king. How he went on, nobody never knew, but it's mitch if it didn't trouble his wind a bit afore he get to th' bottom of that bottle. However, when morning come, this vitriol bottle happened to be wanted, and servant lass said, "Oh, I put it in little window yon, at side of Carrier's rum." But when they went to look for it, they found the rum bottle left, and vitriol gone. Well, they in a terrible tacking about this, but there were no help then. "We're in for it this time," said landlord. "He's lying upon road somewhere as dead as a robin, by mon. You munna mention a word about it to never a wick soul, or else we's get hanged for this job." Well, all that day they were in a terrible trouble about the vitriol, for they expected news coming into th' house every minute that Billy be found lying stiff by roadside, and they dursn't ask nobody if they'd seen him. Well, day come to an end at last, and after all th' house a getting to bed, except landlord and his wife, he said to her that he couldn't rest in his bed till he seed whether Bill turned up or not. So he were determined to sit up till 3 in the morning. So he did so, and wife stopped wi' him, for th' old lad were terrible boggart frightened. Well, as it get near 3 o'clock, th' old lad hearkened till his ears cracked, but he dursn't open th' door for his skin, he was so flayed of seeing Bill's ghost, for he felt sure that he were done for. At last they heard a whip crack. "There's summat coming now," said the landlord, and he went as white as a sheet. Then a cart pulled up at Thow's End, and they hears somebody shout, "Whoa!" and begin a whistling. "By mass," said thou feller, "it's yon," and he were just going to drop on his knees and begin a saying his prayers. "Come, I'll go and see what it is," said wife, and away who went to th' little window, just as Bill come whistling up and put his arm through to reach his drink out as usual. "Is that thee, Bill?" said landlady. "Me, aye. What th'ectum are you doing up at this time o' night?" "Come thy ways in and let's look at thou," said th' old woman. "Go round and I'll open t' door." "It's all right," said wife when he went off into t' kitchen. "He's yon as fresh as ever. Don't say a word about it. I'm going to let him in for thou to look at." "Art as sure it's him?" said the landlord. "Thou shalt see for thyself in a minute," said the wife. And who went and opened t' door, and in walked Bill whistling and flirting his whip as fresh as a daisy and as bowed as a lion. Th' old landlord stared at lad with all his e'en, but Bill were there. "Let's be sure it is Wick," said the landlord in a whisper. "Ask him if he'll have summat to ate." "Can thou do wi' a bit o' summat to eat?" said th' old woman. "Can a duck swim?" cried Bill. "Thou'd tell," said landlord, "it's him," and he jumped up. "He, old lad," cries he, taking Bill by th' thond, "I never were as fain to see nobody sin' I were born o' my mother as I am to see thee this minute." "I thought tha'd been—" "Been what?" said Bill, for he could make neither top nor tail of this doomment at 3 o'clock in the morning. "Hast to get in thy room out at her little window?" said landlord. "It's there, see ya," said Bill, holding the bottle up. "And didn't get it yesterday morning?" said the landlord. "I did that," said Bill. "And did to sup it?" said the landlord. "Sup it? Aye," said Bill. "I don't use grease in my shoon with it, do I? And how didst like it?" "Like it?" said Bill. "I liked it well enough, but it were rather stinted a measure, and it were a very cold morning. You wouldn't like to have your drink fented if you'd to drive o'er this moor top of a winter's night." "Then thou supped it?" said the landlord. "I did that, and soon too," said Bill. "Then get summat to eat and be off out of this house, for by, there's a cast iron inside. Thou supped a bottle of vitriol." "It did tickle me up a bit at first," said Bill, "but I could have done a sup more on it, vitriol or no vitriol." "Well, that licks Batterlash," cried the landlord. "How much is it a quart, this vitriol?" said Bill, "for it's noan such bad tacking of a cow neat." "Finish that bit of stuff," said the landlord, "and get out of this hole as fast as thou can, for thou doesn't belong to this world." And away went Bill, whistling down the Bruce side, as breet as a squirrel. "Well, thou's done that wheel, Sam," said the landlord. "Aye, that's a corker," replied the sexton. "Why, vitriol would burn all through a flat iron." "There isn't a flat iron in Rochdale town as hard as Bill," replied the quarryman. "Oh, it's a sunbrunt lie fro' end to end," said the landlord. "I'm rayther hard a belief myself," muttered the old pedlar. "Well, you han it as I had it," said the quarryman, "and I'd charge you nowt for it." "Aye, and it's chep at the price too, old lad," replied the sexton. "Here, some on you tell us a tale," cried the quarryman. "Aye, let somebody else try," said the landlord. "Come, old friend," continued he, turning to the pedlar, "canna you do a bit of summat for us?" By this time the old man was getting chirrupy, and he began to clear his throat at once, as if he was quite willing to contribute his little share to the social pleasure of the night. He had been a good singer in his youth too, and although now his voice was sinking into the piping treble of age, it was still governed by a natural taste which made his singing pleasant to listen to. When the landlord spoke to him, he began to fidget upon his chair. "I don't know that I can bring a tale to mind just now," said the old man, clearing his throat, "but I'll try a bit of an old ditty, if you ain't a mind. It used to be a favourite when I were a lad." "That'll just do," said the sexton, rubbing his hands. "Strike up, old lad." "That couldn't please me better," said the quarryman. "Aye, wet your whistle and begin," cried the landlord. After a little preliminary cough or two, the old pedlar turned his face towards the ceiling and struck up the North Country Lass. "A North Country lass up to London did pass, although with her nature it did not agree, which made her repent and so often lament, still wishing again in the North for to be. Oh, the oak and the ash and the bonny ivy tree, they flourish at home in my own country. Fain would I be in the North Country, where the lads and the lasses are making away. There should I see what is pleasant to me, and mischief for them that entice me away. Oh, the oak and the ash and the bonny ivy tree, they flourish at home in my own country. I like not the court nor the city resort, since there is no fancy for lasses like me. Their fuss and their pride I can never abide, because with my humour it does not agree. Oh, the oak and the ash and the bonny ivy tree, they flourish at home in my own country. How oft have I been on a Lancashire green, where the lads and the lasses resort for to play, when we with delight from the morning till night could frolic and feast on a bright holiday. Oh, the oak and the ash and the bonny ivy tree, they flourish at home in my own country. The ewes and the lambs and the kids and the dams, to see in the country how finely they play. The bells how they ring, and the birds how they sing, and the fields and the gardens how pleasant and gay. Oh, the oak and the ash and the bonny ivy tree, they flourish at home in my own country. At wake or at fair, away with all care, it's there with our sweethearts we used for to dance. Oh, what hard up I'd I, my ill fortune to try, when up to this London my steps did advance. But still I perceive I a husband may have, if I to the city my feelings could frame. But I'll have a lad that is North Country bred, or else to the ending a virgin's me name. Oh, the oak and the ash and the bonny ivy tree, they flourish at home in my own country. A maiden I am, and a maid I'll remain, until my own country once more I do say. For here in this place I shall never set face on a lad that's intended my love for to be. Oh, the oak and the ash and the bonny ivy tree, they flourish at home in my own country. Then farewell, my daddy, and farewell, my mam, until I do meet you I ever shall mourn. My brothers, my sisters, and oh many others, before the year's over to you I'll return. Oh, the oak and the ash and the bonny ivy tree, they flourish at home in my own country. Well done, old lad, cried the landlord, clapping his hands. That's a bonny song. It's naught else, said the quarryman. What's the name on it, old man? It's called the North Country Lass, replied the pedlar. Well, it's a good un, said the quarryman. Bring thou chap another gill, cried the sexton. Aye, bring him another gill, said the landlord. Come, let's draw up, continued he. They drew their chairs nearer, as if they were setting in for the night. Now then, "Who's next?" said the sexton, as he laid his glass down upon the table. "Stop and rosin," replied the quarryman. "Stop and rosin. We and see in a bit."